this forum as an opportunity for our final year students to be exposed to practical knowledge to enable them function well and add value to their chosen fields of endeavor. It's our honest expectation that as our students interact with and learn from the best of industry, who will be speaking on relevant topics in their respective fields of expertise, as well as the demands of industry, our students will be inspired to make a difference in their chosen careers.
Indeed, the Practitioners Forum is one of the mandatory courses every graduate student is supposed to take, even though non-examinable. Some are here this evening because they took this program for granted, even though non-examinable but mandatory. It's a must-pass program, and the university attach importance to this program. If you don't attend all the programs, you will not graduate. And I can tell you that lives normally change after this program, because we don't just select the programs, we don't just select the speakers, we flip through experts to speak to us for the purpose of achieving the objectives for this program.
As a country, the state must create jobs. The second context is that we are not creating enough jobs, so we have an unemployment situation in the country. The third point I've made is that most of those unemployed are the vulnerable, that's the young people or females whose ability to also fight on the job market is restricted because they are raising the next generation. They are carrying our babies and spending the little money they don't have for our babies whilst we go about doing other things. So as a society, we need to recalibrate. We need to fix that problem. And that is why I love the title of this presentation, Standards and Job Creation. And you remember we said unleashing the potential, because we want to create a lot of jobs quickly. We must create jobs faster than we are having children. If we are having children faster than we are creating jobs, the problems will be there. If there are no standards, there will be no trade. And if there is no trade, there will be no economy. And if there is no economy, there will be no jobs. So you can jump and say, if there are no standards, there will be no jobs. Because without standards, you cannot trade. Without trading in goods and services, you cannot have an economy. Without an economy, you cannot have a job. Sadly, I must say, we often overlook the importance and the value of standards, and yet most of us expect standardized treatment. But standard is a consensus document. We say document because it must be written, which describes the features of either a product, a service, or a process. And we say the language of trade because it must be very clear and unambiguous. It's consensus because you and I agree here that what is 5:30? Let's meet at 5. They say, are you saying 5 or 5:30? My office or your office? We agree on it, we sign off on it. When you have an exam at UPSA, the university has its code, its standard for exam. It's prescribed. There is no ambiguity and everybody follows the rule. When you have the Graduate Practitioners Forum, you have a scheme, a protocol for doing it. It's a standard. However, globally, you can have an international standard, a local, a national, an industry, or even a domestic standard. You can even have a standard for your office. But for the Republic of Ghana, as by law established, the Ghana Standards Authority is the secretariat for standards in Ghana. I use the word secretariat. And please note, the GSA does not develop standards for Ghana. Ghanaians develop standards for Ghana. However, governments, for health, safety, and environmental reasons, may wish a particular standard to become compulsory or mandatory. At that level, then we call it a technical regulation, because now it's enforceable by law, and if you break it, you'll be punished. Without standards, you cannot trade, you cannot interconnect. So, standards are actually good for business, and they help us. And they're actually forces for good. The Ghana Standards Authority, of which I'm the Director General, have developed several standards to meet Ghana's needs. Few of you will be aware of this, but we have standards for Hausa cocoa, we have standards for maize, we have standards for sobolo, we have standards for bitters. Of course, we also have standards for gold, for the petroleum industry, and for vehicles, we do have standards. The difficulty is always in the language. Usually, people mean we do not enforce standards when they say you don't have standards. We do have standards, but do we enforce them? Or are they widely known? And that is the discussion we should have. But we have standards. And let me illuminate you on how we do standards in Ghana and indeed across Africa. When we have to develop a standard, the first question to ask is there an international standard? And why do we do it? Our businesses should be able to compete globally. So if there is a global standard which meets our needs, why reinvent the wheel? We'll adopt it identically. And if you look at our standards, when you see GS/ISO, it means it's Ghana standard and international standard. But sometimes, for health, safety, and environment reasons, we may wish to change. In that case, we say, is there an African standard? Because if it's about the environment, Africans are Africans, more or less, not 100%. And then if there is an African standard, typically automobile standards, we adopt it. If there is none, then we develop a Ghanaian standard. And in several areas, we don't have any standard. Indeed, in several areas, the Ghana Standards Authority has been the first. Thanks to Ghanaian standards, companies like Casapreco can export millions of dollars of alcoholic beverages outside our shores. Thanks to our standards, you have maize standards. We have actually even classed them. Thanks to our standards, you cannot trade commodities on the Ghana Commodity Exchange. So standards work. They provide a value, and they are useful. This year, we are developing standards for the informal sector. So that when you have an electrician, a bricklayer, anybody in those areas, and they say they meet a certain requirement, you say, where is the standard? And show me who certified you to that standard.